let's go through farming the Sisters of Parvos. This is very similar to Kuva but does have some differences, and I'm going to go through this as if you haven't done any Kuva so everything will be in this one video. Before beginning this, you will need to have the Call of the Tempestari quest finished. To start with, we need to start gathering some Requiem relics. This is so that we can gather the symbols. I'm sure these have real names, but the symbols, and we need those to be able to defeat the Lich in the first place. As you can see, there are 2 to each relic, giving us a total of 8. I would recommend having at least 1 of each before you begin doing this. And they are primarily acquired by coming on over to the Kuva events that you can see just here. And if we zoom in, we can see the Blood has a guaranteed relic, while the rest of them have a chance of relic. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this spy mission right here. And the only major difference is going to be this Kuva siphon right here. And you can see we have 4 different braids on either side. And what we need to do is wait until one of them raises. We'll see it in a second. And once that happens, what we're doing is we're waiting to see, and once it raises, you can see it starting to suck on stuff. And what we're aiming to do is hit these black clouds once it raises. You'll see once you hit the black cloud with the operator's weapon, that is what is going to break the braid on the Kuva siphon. Do it for all 4 of them. So we have 1 left here right now. Here's another example of the black cloud right there. Once that's done, we can go ahead and complete the mission as per normal. Of course, if you want to do more of these missions, feel free to. Kuva can be pretty useful, especially if you want to start getting into Rivens. That is how you get more Requiem relics. We will get more once we actually start going through the Sisters of Parvos process itself, because we'll get them from the actual enemies that we're fighting, but that's just going to get you your first set of them. To open up those relics then, if you come on over to the Fissures tab, you're going to see that we have the Kuva Fissures right here. These are identical to all of the other fissures, apart from they take place on the Kuva fortress, so they should not really need all that much explanation, if I'm honest. So that's something that you guys can do in your own time. Now that you have all the symbols, it's time for us to go ahead and spawn our Sister of Parvos. Before we go in there, let's talk about progenitors. I'll flash the thing up on the screen so you can see which warframes add which element to your weapon. So you see on my Tenet Archoplasmor here, we're actually going to get another one of these because I need to power it up. We have Toxin, and this is generally speaking going to be my recommendation, especially on something like this. There's radiation, because radiation damage is already good against Grunier stuff, and Toxin penetrates shields, and we can even just add on a little bit of cold so that we have viral on there as well, which just does like mega amounts of damage. Or if we wanted to, we can put electricity on there, and so basically we can switch between electricity and viral. So we can switch between corrosive and viral depending on our needs. We got armor, we can do armor stripping, we can do shield penetration, all this kind of stuff. So I do recommend getting Toxin on there. Heat is also good. You can do good stuff with heat. Those are the 2 elements that I recommend putting on basically everything. We're going to go ahead and we're going to switch to a Warframe that is going to add poison to me. We're not going to level the one we already have because they do get reset once you start merging them. So I recommend leaving them base until you are ready to work with them properly. And when it comes to actually facing off against the sisters, then this isn't going to matter for the first mission, but after that, you might as well have this set up and ready to go. I heavily recommend having yourself a build that switches out your usual loadout for some magnetic. This may not even be like a perfect loadout that you might normally use, but the magnetic here is going to do extra damage against shields, and this is important because we can't penetrate the shields of the sisters or the hounds that accompany her. In addition to that, they also have some kind of damage gating, so rate of fire and multi-shot are also completely essential because that is how you're going to strip down their shields the fastest. Lastly, I also recommend having a combatant on call. Mine obviously has max health and combat skill here. I have equipped with this ultra. This is actually really, really useful for spawning the Lich mostly, but I just wanted to make sure I showed that before we continued going on. With setup out of the way, it's time for us to spawn our Sister of Parvos. Now, the best method I've had for this so far has been for the capture Hydra here on Pluto. We're going in private. We don't want to get mixed up with anybody else for this one. What we're looking for first off is one of these hands, and we are going to need to put in a Zenith Granum coin. If you don't have one, the enemy that actually drops these does spawn in this mission. So if you just wait around a little bit, wait for him to spawn, you can grab one and then bring it back to the hand. And once we're inside, we're going to go ahead, drop our on-call crew member, and we don't even need to do anything now. We obviously will to make it a bit quicker, but he will sort out most of the enemies in here. And technically speaking, 25 kills is a passing rank and should allow us to spawn the Sister of Parvos if we don't happen to make the 75. Our 75 kills were successful. Let's continue on with the mission. Capture the target, and you can see my Sister of Parvos has already spawned. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Very obviously marked. I don't believe you'll miss this. Then as per Kuva, take a look over its head. If it's what you want, go ahead and collect it. If it's not what you want, leave it alone. And we can keep on re-rolling this until we get the thing that we want. Before we leave, the treasurer can also still spawn, so we do kind of want that as well. There he is. Just give him a minute. He'll arrive. Take his coin, and then we can rinse and repeat until we get the tenet weapon that we want. I want an extra arcoplasmor because mine is only on 36% at the moment, and we want to get that all the way up to 60. You'll see at the end as we merge the weapons together how that works. Once you have the nemesis that you want, and you have selected the weapon that you want to hunt down, what we're going to find is out in the system, we now have one of the planets covered in blue. This is obviously going to be one of the Corpus planets. We want to hunt down the Requiums as quickly as we can, but I do have some tips so that don't keep on powering up the Nemesis unnecessarily. Before we go in, we are going to make sure that we have the Parazon set up so that it has 3 different symbols on, just because it's good practice to have this set up and ready. But if the Nemesis comes and sees me early, and you guys will see this if it should happen, we're just going to stun it or put it down or whatever we have to do, and then we're just going to leave it alone and continue the mission as normal. The reason we're doing this is because we can actually get all of these Requiems if we want to before we actually power up the Nemesis. But we want to get at least 1 of the Requiems. But we should actually be able to get 2 on Venus. So let's start out with this mobile defense here so you can see what the major differences are. And so as you can see, standard mobile defense mission to pass up from, we now have these hounds. And these hounds do hit pretty hard, so be very careful. But you can see there with the Piranha, because we have so much multi-shot and rate of fire, shouldn't be too much of an issue for us as we go through. Hopefully that just kind of gets across the point that I was making before, that they can be tough if you like try and shoot with like a sniper rifle or something, like a really high damage weapon. You'll be like, what the hell? But something that's got high fire rate and high individual hits, that is what's going to do well for you. Dog number 2, let's get you down. Where'd you go, little hound? I think we've got two. I've not seen 2 before. That's hilarious. As you can see now, so we've taken down 2 hounds, and the Requiem is much further around than it would be for standard Kuva Lich. Just so that you guys can see, we probably need like 8 of these instead of like 10 or 20 or whatever it was. And of course, the Corpus like to take all of the money. So instead of taking like a spread of resources, they take like 90% of your cash. So just be aware of that when you're getting into this. At this point, I'm going to make my way across a load of these easier, non-endless missions then. I probably won't do an excavation. And if I do encounter the Nemesis early, I'll show you what I do just so you guys can see that happening. If we now look at my Venus, we haven't even done that many. We still have more left we could do. You could probably actually get all 3 here, but I like leaving the defense till last. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do the defense and then do the execution. But because we now know 2 of the symbols instead of 1, you can make sure that both of those are in fact on the Parazon. Bass and Zata. So let's get that on there. And then we can go ahead and continue. There's no guarantee that you're going to be in that order, but this just can speed things up a little bit for you and make things a little bit easier. But as you can see, I did actually face off against the Lich once now. So we now need to change the order of this. We know that at least 2 of these are correct. This one is definitely not at the front. So 50-50 chance this one's at the front. But you can see the Requiem's already a quarter of the way round. Next up then, we get to chase the Lich around the origin system. Next up we can see it's going to be Phobos, and it's very unlikely that we're going to get past the next one, which I think is Europa. We're going to head into Phobos and we're going to attempt to hopefully get the 3rd code before we actually do the execution. So if she spawns in a mission, we might stun her or kick her out of the mission, run to extraction. We're not going to actually do the execution until we have the 3rd code. And if you've been doing it the same way as me, leaving, defeating your Lich for a while, you can, by the time you've done a couple of missions on Phobos, have all of the symbols that it's going to be on display. This should mean, in terms of odds, if this is the wrong one that goes to the end, we need to put foam on there. So let's do that. We need to start doing process of elimination to find the correct code as per the Kuva Liches. Next up, we're going to go ahead and do the execution on Phobos. After that last execution then, we now know that this is correct, this one is not correct, which means we now actually know the combination that we need to have. That is solved. We just need to encounter it one more time on the next planet, and we can go and hunt down our Lich. Next planet is going to be Jupiter, and we'll just pick any where we think it's going to spawn. A good exterminate is probably a good idea, or a mobile defense. Let's go with that first. And then once we have finally executed our Corpus Lich, it's time for us to move over to the Railjack section here. Zoom on out, and we should find ourselves a little blue spot on Neptune. It's time for us to go and clear this mission. It's very simple. It's going to be a quick little exterminate with some ships. I don't even know if I'm going to show much of it. All we need to do is blow up 2 cruise ships and 2 security nodes. It really doesn't take very long. And then we go in and assassinate the Lich. Main differences between this one and the Kuva Lich is on the way in, we are going to have to defeat 2 specters before we can actually face off against the sister. And then when the specters are down, we can go ahead and attack the Lich itself. Of course, we go in for the execution once they're down. We'll be faced with the choice of either store it for later with convert or take the weapon and destroy the Lich, which is what we're doing here, so I can get my second copy of the Tenet Archiplasma. With all that done, we can extract as usual. With the Lich down, we can come on over to the foundry. And if you come into your in-progress part right here, we can claim our Archiplasma. And in addition, you will also have a pre-built Hound. Very nice for if you want to be grinding out that affinity. There are 3 in total, so you're probably going to need to do this a few times. We can, in fact, go ahead and build our own, so we can build all the different parts and stuff. You'll see them in your mission rewards. And if you have multiple of the same type of weapon, we can come into the upgrade screen, whatever action button it is for you down at the bottom, and then we can Valence Fusion to add them together. And you can pick which outcome you would like. So, for example, if you had heat and toxin, you'd be able to choose between the results here. Obviously, I just need to confirm this. And we can do this all the way up until it reaches 60%. If you ever decide that you want to just check on what percentage it's on, if you come into your preview tab here, you can see that mine is now on 39.7%. And that is how we continue to power up our Tenet weapons. For the Hounds, if you'd like a specific guide on those, let me know down in the comments and I'll see if I get something like that made on the smaller video channel. And that concludes how we deal with the Sisters of Parvos. I hope that helps you out, and I'll catch you all in the next video.